Hey VC, it's Gary again. VC, everyone and anyone. Going to try a little experiment again today. Going to play some music in the background, and hopefully it remains in the background and not the noisy mess that I had in my earlier attempt at playing some stuff in the background. Of course, there's always a copyright issue, so who knows. Today, I'm seriously trying to give you guys a break and give you a day off, but I'll try not to post anything tomorrow, I promise, and I will keep this under an hour, hopefully way under an hour. Decided today to kind of at the last minute to do Gary Peacock, my past history with him, whatever, but just my impressions of him, my fandom appreciation of him. Bassist Gary Peacock, very much active, very much still around, and I'd say almost unfortunately best known as the bass player for Keith Jarrett's very popular Standards Trio. I say unfortunately just because there's nothing wrong with the Standards Trio or the standards they play or any of the music they play. It's just that, Gary Peacock's done so many things on his own, a lot of things as a leader, a lot of things as a co-leader especially, and original music, and things that are much more out there than the type of thing that he's known for, and certainly a lot more out there than anything that you're going to find the Standards Trio playing. And the Standards Trio, which, I recall was around when they first came out with the whole concept, which was very surprising to me, that Keith Jarrett would go, not that he would play standards, but that he would fully form a band with the sole intention of playing standards. And it's a band that's been around since the very early 80s. I remember when that first Standards album came out, I thought it was a one-off album. And Gary Peacock's the bassist in there, and Jack DeJohnette is the drummer. And it's, still to this day the best known thing that Gary Peacock's done. Probably prior to that, my guess is that the best known things that he's done prior to that was probably Paul Bly, because he played with the pianist Paul Bly quite a lot, and on again, off again over the years. So he had quite a history with Paul Bly, starting in the late 60s, possibly even earlier, and continuing on. And sometimes there'll be a very long period of time when him and Paul Bly don't get together and do anything, and then they do again. And Gary Peacock has a very kind of, I'll say, avant-garde beginnings. In the mid-60s, around 64, 65, he played with Albert Ayler, the very modern experimental saxophone player. And that's where a lot of people that were around then, that were into this kind of music then, would have probably first heard of him. And he recorded at least 4 albums with Albert Ayler. So his beginning of his career was something very much in the avant-garde world. And then playing with Paul Bly, who's not quite as... Paul Bly does some pretty experimental stuff, but not perhaps quite as out there as maybe as the Albert Ayler stuff. And after many years, he did solo albums. He's done, the Standards Trio thing, though, is probably the best known nowadays, certainly. And the Standards Trio has stayed together since the early 80s, on again, off again, doing a lot of things, a lot of albums, and a lot of tours. A lot of touring they do. Every once in a while, though, and their albums are good, and I've got a handful. I don't have every single one, but I've got several of them. The Standards Trio doing standards. But every once in a while, they'll make an album like this. And this is, I had this on vinyl, and I forgot to pull it out. Changes. So here's an album from '83. This was the time very much at the beginning of the Standards Trio. And apparently this was done while they were recording the first 1 or 2 Standards albums. And they decided, to just go and do like a total improv thing while they were in the studio. And this disc is the result of, there's 3 tracks on here. It's not long, about 36, 37 minutes of 3 longer tracks that are basically improvised on the spot in the studio, and this was kind of them, maybe blowing off steam or getting away a little bit from the standards thing. So this is interesting, and away from that kind of very strict area there. To confuse Matt, that was called Changes. In 1987, while they were doing a tour, they compiled this album called Changeless, just to make life more difficult for us looking for record titles. This was a tour of the Standards Trio, and they were playing standards on this tour, but also put aside a little bit of time every evening, apparently, to do an improvisation and just do stuff off the cuff, which is something Keith Jarrett's done in concert many times, entire concerts, especially of solo piano, where he would do that. This was recorded in various dates. Let me see, 4 different dates, all in October 1987 when they were touring. The interesting thing about this is really good. This is actually my favorite disc by the Standards Trio. They're not playing standards, but as far as they've done 3 that I'm aware of, possibly more, albums that weren't standards but featured this particular trio, and were done usually around the same time, either in the studio or live, as the standards thing was going on. So this was compiled over 4 different nights in October 87, which was this little side piece of the show that they put aside to just do improvisations. And sometimes for me, Keith Jarrett's on, and sometimes he's off when he's doing the improvisations. He was on here, and this is my favorite of the trio albums, the Standards Trio, once they got together. This is really them on Changeless from 87. The interesting thing with this is, at first I thought the drums were a little muffled sounding. Then I realized that Jack DeJohnette must have just bought a pair of mallets, soft mallets, that he fell in love with, because during the entire show, I don't think he plays sticks, standard typical wooden drumsticks on any of the tracks that are on here. There's 4 tracks, so 1 from each of 4 gigs where they improvise. And I believe DeJohnette's playing the soft mallets on the drum kit, so it lends a very softer, percussive sound. You hear more of the notes on the actual drums, and almost more like a timpani effect. And it's throughout the whole album. The tracks are 9 minutes, 15 minutes, 11 minutes, 13 minutes. So this was just a very small portion of the show that I guess they put aside to do. May have even been encores. But this, I love this album. This is the one that I pretty much pull out when I want to hear these 3 guys play together. That was from 87. This one came out in 2002 from concerts in April 2001, and it's Always Let Me Go, a 2-disc set, same group, but many years later, 2001, and it's the same thing. It's a tour by the Standards Trio. It's a 2-disc set. There's a lot of music on here. Appears to be the same exact layout where they're doing improvisations, though some of the tracks are credited only to Keith Jarrett, while others are credited to all 3 of the guys playing. So I don't know how that was determined, because they all sound like improvisations to me. Some very long tracks on here. There's and I didn't take it out to check first, but I know there's like 30 something minute tracks on here. So it's not an easy go-to album for a lot of people. If you're starting your exploration of these guys, the very first track is 32 minutes and 12 seconds. Then there's a 3.5 minute track. Then there's a 16-minute track, a 9-minute track, a 34.5 minute track. I'm actually going to play this when I'm done with the video, but it's a little tougher going. It appears to be entirely improvised, and I don't know if this was a tour where they played standards at all, because this was recorded in April 2001, and with the amount of music on here, it doesn't seem like it was. It seems like they may have either done a tour where they decided to keep the trio format with these 3 guys, but not play standards, or whether they just did a couple side shows where they just put it aside and said, okay, guys, we're not going to do standards. We're going to do improv here. But this is interesting, and I'm going to listen to this amongst others I have here when I'm done. The one thing about these videos is it makes me want to go back and listen to the music as well. Some of these I haven't heard prior to recording the video, and I haven't played them for a while. So those are the only three that I'm aware of that the Standards Trio did that are original material, not standards. Though my focus, I started with the Standards Trio because it's probably the best known thing that Gary Peacock's done in terms of the people in the outside world knowing him. However, my favorite Gary Peacock comes in the form of his solo albums. And here's one from February '77. These are going to be ECM albums. This is Tales of Another. And confusingly, who's in the band? Well, Gary Peacock on bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums, and Keith Jarrett on piano. This was actually the first time that the Standards Trio got together. They didn't form the Standards Trio at this point. It was another 3 or 4 years before they did that. But it was the first time this configuration of gentlemen played together. This is quite different than the Standards Trio music. It's also quite different from their improvisation albums, those three that I just showed, because all of the material was composed by Gary Peacock, and there's a lot of improvisation on the tunes. And that's when, it really, Keith Jarrett being, on the piano is the primary lead instrument. So naturally, when it goes off into the improvisations, based on the tunes that Gary Peacock wrote, then it does. It sounds quite a bit like the other improvised albums by the Standards Trio. And I guess they heard something in here that floated their boat too. February '77 this was. And this is tough going though. This is not Gary Peacock can write some fairly out there themes. Not like you would think of as pretty music really. So this might be one of his more difficult albums, actually, of the few that I have that he's done as leader. But a worthwhile visit, though, especially because this is the only time that the Standards Trio ever got together just performing Gary Peacock music. So there's a little bit of an interesting twist in it there. Photo of Gary Peacock, circa 1977, when he's got the mustache. Man, he looks like a Hollywood tough guy when he had that mustache. He should have been cast in something further for then. Glad I wouldn't run across him with the mustache. And oddly enough, he looks so friendly and approachable without it. December '77. This is really rare. Look at that. A cutout ECM album. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of cutout ECM albums I've ever seen. I think I have 2, and this is one of them. I would have gladly paid full price for this. This was December '77, so just a number of months after the prior album, December Poems. I don't know why I love that cover so much, as simple as it is. This was recorded in December. Originals by Gary Peacock. This is probably my favorite solo album of his, but that's because I'm a weirdo when it comes to these kind of things. There's a sans mustache picture, just a few months after the prior album. And I love that photo of him playing the upright bass by the photo there, by the artwork, the modern artwork. Solo bass album. For about half of it, Jan Garbrick plays saxophones on 2 tracks. Only 2? I thought it was 3. Looks like it's only 2 tracks. The rest are solo bass. So I mean, it's you have to be up for listening to solo bass. People like Bar Phillips and possibly David Holland can listen. And this is not as avant-garde or out there as a lot of solo bass albums that basically tend to make a lot of noise amongst the music. This is, very musical, but you have to have the ability to sit and listen to solo bass. I think there's one track that does have some overdub bass on it, but most of the tracks are solo bass live. And the 2 tracks with Jan Garbrick on saxophone spice it up nicely. A nice change. This was one that I couldn't buy on CD fast enough when the CD era came around, just because the lack of noise. There's no drums or anything like that, and with a whole bunch of the tracks being just solo bass, you can imagine vinyl can get a little noisy. Probably my favorite, could be my favorite one. It depends on mood. Going on as a leader, I have this one from February 1980, Shift in the Wind. Probably his most accessible solo album, at least of the ones I'm aware of. Gary Peacock again. He wrote all the material on this with the exception of 2 tracks, which are improvisations in the studio. He went back to a piano, bass, and drums trio for this album. So it seems like he likes that permeation, that combination. However, not with Jack DeJohnette or Keith Jarrett. He uses Art Landy on piano and Elliot Zygmunt on drums. And this is a lot more lyrical than the prior Tales of Another album with Keith Jarrett. So Art Landy is a bit more of a musically conservative, I would say, in terms of, he doesn't go on some of those wild free-form fancies that Keith Jarrett often does, and Keith Jarrett does on the prior Gary Peacock album. This is really beautiful. This is easy to listen to for most part. It's got, again, it's based around Gary Peacock's compositions, with improvisation, and 2 tracks that are probably improvised because all 3 band members get credits. So it's strictly, an acoustic drum kit, the upright bass, acoustic piano, and yet there's this weird electronic effect that pops up in one of the tracks that I can't figure out what it is. And it almost sounds like you could be bowing the high end of the bass but feeding it through electronics, or possibly like bowing the inside of the piano, the piano strings. Or there's some very early basic electronic instrument like a theremin kind of thing, because that's what it sounds like, but it's not credited on the album. It sounds like a theremin, but there's also not a lot. When you hear that sound, there's also not a lot going on in the piano department, which leads me to think it's something Art Landy's doing either inside the piano or using something that didn't get credited on the album, or messing around inside the piano somehow, which people have done and gotten some strange effects over the years that you wouldn't think came from a piano. Nice studio photo. Nice studio photo with the 3 of them. Art Landy at the piano, Gary Peacock in the middle, Elliot Zygmunt, the drummer. This is, I have all these on CD. These are, this is lyrical, very easy to listen to. To continue on, his solo album career, August 81, Gary Peacock, I bought this one as a new release. That's a fantastic cover, too. How many times do I say fantastic in my videos? Thousands. But it's a word that fits. Again, as a leader, Gary Peacock on this one wrote all the compositions, formed in a kind of entirely different musical lineup on here. He's got a quartet on here. So you got Gary Peacock on upright bass, calling back his old buddy Jack DeJohnette on drums. And this was roughly just, August 81 was probably around the time, I think maybe possibly a little bit prior to the time that the Standards Trio was formed. But obviously, Gary Peacock kept in touch with Jack DeJohnette and used Jack DeJohnette on drums. Interesting thing about this, the other 2 musicians are both horn players, so there's no piano on this. Quite interesting. Jan Garbrick is one of the horn players who had played with Peacock prior, on tenor and soprano saxophones, and Thomas Stanko on trumpet, who had also recorded, I believe, early in the ECM days when the label was very new. Thomas Stanko, I think, was recording for them as a band leader, and then didn't record anything for the label for 40 years or something, and in recent years has come back to record on the label. But this is, I love this album. It's a little difficult, it's not necessarily pretty stuff. I love the concept idea of not having the harmonic instrument. You have the bass drums and 2 horn players. So there's a lot of space in there. And when they go off to solo, you'll basically have one horn player laying out and another horn player doing the soloing, and all you have backing them are bass and drums. something you have to record very carefully, or it's going to sound awful, hollow, and empty. And this is ECM, so it's recorded, wonderfully. And it's an interesting musical lineup. It's interesting because I have a few albums of ECM of various artists that seem to like that lineup of having like a bassist and drummer and horn players, usually like a couple horn players, but no guitar or piano in there. So it's a very interesting configuration to listen to. Music can be a little difficult at times. This is one I got to spin this one when I'm done with this video. Based on that, when I say that was August '81, Gary's next album, and the last solo album I have to show by him, was March '87. I didn't get this one on album. Gamba, it's called. And apparently, Gary Peacock was very happy with the results of the prior album, because he used the exact same lineup, whereas he used bass, drums. Peter Erskine is playing drums on here, replacing Jack DeJohnette from the prior album. Jan Garbrick again on saxophones, and Palle Mikkelborg replacing Thomas Stanko, who plays trumpet and flugelhorn. So his very next solo album is very much done in that same lineup as the prior one. So he must have been very happy with the results of that bass, drums, and two horns lineup. And this one, I don't even recall. I don't know how I missed this when it came out. When did I say it was recorded? March '87. Don't know how I missed it, but I missed it. Didn't get the vinyl, which is okay. When I found out about it on CD, it was much in the CD era. Well, it was '87. I probably didn't find out about this until the late '90s, and couldn't not get a copy of. Apparently, it's been out of print on CD. This is one of those things that you might see come out as a digital-only album. It seems like ECM is doing that lately, possibly with some of their albums, releasing them as downloads only. Not a concept I like, but, whatever. And I looked at this and tried to obtain a copy of it any way I could, and it took me a few years. This is probably the single most expensive CD that I can recall that I've ever bought. I don't know, I think I paid, for just a single album, not a double album set or anything, I probably paid maybe like $40 for it or something. The only place I found it was in Germany, from a German company, so I had to pay a lot for shipping. It was there was a single new sealed copy of it that I had to get. And I kept looking at it, and thought, too much money. But I just wanted to hear it, after hearing the last album with a similar lineup and reading about this, and the fact that it was out of print at the time, which meant that, this is a leftover copy at the time, was just an unsold new copy. I had to get it. And if anything, I think I might like it a little better than the prior album. Not necessarily because of the musicians. Maybe the writing is possibly a little more lyrical this time around with that two horns, bass and drum lineup. Not as out there, but very much in the same vein. If you like one, you probably like the other, but it's a little easier to get into. This one I really cherish because I spent so much money on it, and it seems to be such a rarity. Now, I know eventually somebody's going to tell me, I bought that CD for $2.99. I know that's going to happen, and I'm going to slam my head against the wall when I hear it. But I never saw the album, and I don't know if you get the CD for $2.99. I hope you treasure it as much as I do, but it will probably upset me greatly. The only difference with this one, because you have the saxophone, trumpet, bass, and drums, is that Peter Erskine plays a little bit of, it says drum computer, but I think it's electronic drums on this. So on occasion gives it a slightly different color. And actually it works quite well. And I'd say bring it into the modern age. But it doesn't sound dated at all, because especially those electronic drums and sample drum sounds from the late 80s, boy, they sound ancient now. But Peter was very sparingly using them and quite well. So that really works. I have some Colette albums here, a couple. that I thought were oddities that, again, I came across. I remember in Tower Records, this 1994 album, Gary Peacock and Bill Frisell. So that's a good combo. But this is very out there. This is and I love Bill Frisell's early work, like In Line, his first solo album with ECM. And he got into like a countryish Americana stuff, which isn't exactly my cup of tea. He does it incredibly well, but it's just not, my thing. And this one is, he has an album he did with a string quartet, which I have also, which was only a few years ago. That's pretty out there. Along with that, and this one may even exceed it in terms of just overall weirdness. This is a weird album. It's not at all the lyrical thing I was expecting, because on the In Line album that he recorded, his first solo album for ECM, was a lot of spacey, pretty stuff on there. And he also had an upright bass on about half of the album. So I thought it would sound like that, with the same lineup, Gary Peacock, Bill Frisell, or upright bass, I should say, and Bill Frisell. And this time, this is really out. This is out there. And the funny thing is they actually do a version in two parts of Home on the Range, that song Home on the Range. Couple covers. Weird. Just weird. I was like, wow, I think it's pretty much the weirdest thing I've heard Bill Frisell do. That string quartet album he did with string quartet and guitar is pretty out there too, but this ranks right up there with it. And the thing that I'm playing in the background, which hopefully isn't just obscuring everything I'm saying, is a wonderful little duet album recorded live in the studio December 18th, 1989, of Paul Bly on piano and Gary Peacock on upright bass. Nice 61-minute CD, not on the ECM label. What is this? I don't know, it's like 3 label names on here. Owl, Confluence, I can't even read that, and Sunnyside. So I don't know what label this is on. It's called Partners, though. It's another one. I'm pretty sure I saw this in Tower Records. Our Tower Records store closed here in New Jersey, unfortunately. And it's a nice 61-minute album. Obviously duos of the upright bass and piano. And there's also solo tracks. There's solo piano tracks, and there's solo bass tracks. Nice little combo to mix it up a little bit, because you only got 2 instruments in there. Not bad. Paul Bly is pretty out there on this one as well, but he does that sometimes. I think I like this as much as I love guitar, and I like Bill Frisell's processed guitar sound. I think I actually like this album better than the duet album with Bill Frisell and Gary Peacock. So that's basically it as far as his leader albums go. Just another thing that I've shown, because I didn't get this on CD, which upsets me greatly. Paul Bly, Gary Peacock, Barry Altschul, Japan Suite. This was a 2-part thing, part 1 on one side, part 2 on the second side. Sounds like it was a total improvisation live, done in a live concert in Japan in July 1976. I showed this just to show you the history of the many years of Paul Bly and Gary Peacock playing together. The same month that, if you remember the December Poems disc that I showed a while ago, which is the bass solos with Jan Garbarek on a couple tracks, that same month, this was recorded. This is a Bill Connors solo album, one of Bill's 3 albums that he made as a leader for ECM. And the reason I'm showing it is because this was recorded the same month as the December Poems album. This was recorded also December 1977. Bill Connors on guitar, with Jack DeJohnette on drums, so there's that carryover thematically of somebody who plays with Gary Peacock a lot. Gary Peacock on bass and Jan Garbarek on saxophones. So right either before December Poems was recorded or immediately after this was recorded. I don't have any way of knowing, simply because the recording dates simply state December 1977. But 2 albums done in a very short period of time. Now, obviously, Bill Connors is the leader here, but Gary Peacock and Jack DeJohnette on drums and Jan Garbarek on saxophones, and then all of a sudden, December 77, there's December Poems, which is Gary Peacock and Jan Garbarek again. And that's not everything I have by him. Certainly is that he did more projects as a sideman. I eagerly await. It's been quite a while that I've seen anything by Gary Peacock, unless I'm missing it, but certainly didn't come out on ECM. I've seen Gary Peacock do anything as a leader, as a sole leader. Like he's done a lot of duets like that, duet, composed albums, co-led albums, like the one with Bill Frisell and the one I'm playing in the background with Paul Bly. So he's done quite a few where there's co-grouping, but not really solo album based on here's Gary Peacock. It's a band that he put together to play specific music that he wrote. I'm hoping that changes soon. There may be things I missed on other labels because he's obviously recorded, especially for European labels over the years, different permeations and groups and all that. I'd love to hear him do another solo bass album like December Poems. But just wanted to show my appreciation to him, and he's somebody that I tend to even forget about at times, slips under the radar, I guess because he doesn't have so many albums on ECM as a leader, or like I said, even on other labels that I'm aware of so much. And the more things that the Standards Trio does, the less things that he's going to do on his own. And now he is age 79, so I don't know. Hope a lot of these guys don't slow down, and I hope he's one of them. And I hope he has many, years of good health to continue giving us some great stuff. Not always an easy guy to get into, but certainly worth the trip. And there's quite a few albums of his that are easy to like, and a lot that are more difficult to like. But it's a challenging listen, a lot of it, and worthwhile the investment. There's substance there. Okay, guys, this went on a bit longer than anticipated, but I'm under the hour mark, so I should be happy. I'm going to try to give you guys a day off, but I just, I'm here because I'm bored right now. So thank you for watching and for your comments and everything, and I hope that everyone's week is going incredibly wonderfully. Have a good day, and I will see you soon, possibly be watching your videos soon. Take care.